Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.
Antonino Samarco's McLaren clinched the first win of the season last week at Spa as Season 6 of the Apex Racing League GT3 trophy began. Tonight we head to Fuji Speedway for the second round of the championship to see if he can back up his great start. I am Sam Fitzpatrick. Alongside me for this round of the championship is Ron Mons, along with Samuli Kume, bringing you this stream on Apex Racing TV. Ron, we went to a very high-speed circuit for the opening round of the championship. We visit another one tonight. I feel like that McLaren, which served Samarco so well 1 week ago, could well prove to be the car to beat once again round this circuit with one of the longest straights in all of motorsport.
Yeah, this is a very interesting track, you know. It's you can definitely draw similarities between this and Spa, but if you look towards the end of the circuit, it's really tight and twisty. It looks like something you'd find on Monaco instead of a really fast circuit. So the contrast is a bit different on this track. You know, you do have that very long straightaway, as you mentioned, as the drivers will negotiate going down into turn 1, but you also have the very tight and twisty section towards the second half of this track, so it'll be nice to see what Samarco can do with that McLaren. Certainly put on a very fantastic drive last time out in Spa. That was absolutely beautiful to watch, so we'll have to see what he can do in that McLaren tonight.
Yeah, he could well be at the top. Of course, in qualifying, hasn't had an opportunity to set a lap time yet. We have this new format with the first 10 minutes being assigned to the amateur drivers, the next 10 minutes being for the pro-ams, and the final, well, tonight, 12 minutes for the pros, just so that they have an equal amount of time. I could get all nerdy about it, but I won't bore you with that. But it makes sense, basically, for each of the classes. I mean, we'll soon have our pro drivers out on circuit. Well, they are out on circuit. Soon they will be starting to set some very competitive lap times. And, of course, it was, you know, a competitive order all the way down the field last time out. But, I mean, we've had Spa last week, and of course everyone was very much preparing for the 24 hours run. Is there going to be a bit of a lull, do you think, tonight? Because, you know, Spa 24 takes a lot from you. After that race, you want to take a few days off. I wonder if there'll be a few drivers a bit underprepared compared to last week, at least when it comes to this round, due to the fact that they just wanted a couple of nights off from sim racing.
could be something to look out for tonight. I will say last week's racing was absolutely fantastic. We had battles all across the field, and the field altogether was really close when it came to lap time. Right now, if you look at the timing board, it's very close between the front two of Roseth and Motini, I believe. Right now, it's complete tie between those two drivers up at the front of the field right now. So it'll be nice to see some close battling that we saw in Spa, and fingers crossed we have some very fantastic racing tonight.
Yeah, of course, unlike Spa, it's not going to be a 75-minute race this time round. It's going to be just a 60-minute race. So a little bit shorter for these drivers, but the fuel is limited to just 60%. And so the drivers should be able to go a maximum of about 36 minutes, probably not even that, probably closer to 30 minutes, honestly, on a tank of fuel. But there should be a good 10-minute window or so where we'll see the first drivers come in compared to the last drivers, as the first drivers in the pure category are now setting their lap times in this qualifying session. Kolnaji currently at the top, but I think that will probably be beaten eventually. It might be beaten very soon, in fact, not by Ethan Bass. He is just in 35th place. I'm sure he'll get further up there. Oliveri in the 4th position. David in the top 10 as well. But and Antonino Samarco as well, not with a very strong time to start off either. We've still got another 8 minutes of the session to go.
Looking at Marco's performance tonight is definitely going to be my biggest focal point of them all coming into tonight's race, because we saw the fantastic pace that he showed all throughout Spa. Was really the dominant force, led for all but a few laps here and there, and the only reason why he didn't lead all the laps was just because he had to pit a bit earlier, because that McLaren really drank fuel. You could see the flames coming out of the back of the thing, and the other BMWs that were behind were a lot more careful and a lot more frugal on their gas, so that was the only reason he didn't lead lights to flag there. So we'll have to see how Samarco's pace is this week compared to how it was last. This is definitely a challenging course for these drivers. There's some very interesting things. You're seeing very big things on the outside of the course, and those are the sausage curbs, which I think are going to play a pretty big effect in tonight's race. I was driving the Audi earlier today and hit a few of those curbs and got quite significant airtime. I think I had the other front tires about 8 feet off the ground, which I don't even know how I managed to do that. But these drivers, of course, are very fast, the best in the field, so I wouldn't expect them to get caught out by those curbs. But when they're pushing these cars to the limit, you never know.
Yeah, and it's not quite as brutal as if it was in a single-seater as David or David. Do let us know on the chat. There goes Samarco, look at that. 4/10 of a second clear. Porsche had an absolute stranglehold of the front 3 rows for a moment there, but not for especially long, because Samarco's McLaren putting himself back up to pole position as a few drivers going back to the pits after those first few laps and wanting to get a new set of tyres.
Samarco, that is a very great time from him right now, about nearly 4 seconds, not 4 seconds, 4/10 of a second, clear of Kolnagi, who's currently in second. So that is a very good time from him. We'll have to see if he can improve later on this session. You still have a little bit of time left. Right now we're 26 minutes into a 32-minute session. So right now we're about halfway through the allotted time that these pro drivers are given. So we still have about 5.5 minutes left for these drivers to set times, which at a track like Spa isn't a lot of time to work with when we were setting about 2-minute lap times. But at a track like this, which is a bit shorter, definitely a lot faster, and right now you can see Samarco right now tracking a 1:37.9 as his fastest lap so far. So definitely plenty of time for more drivers to set a time, but it's looking very good for Samarco as he goes into the final sector of the track, into the chicane here, which I have a bit of a love-hate relationship for. It's bit clunky, if I'm being brutally honest, and one thing that'll definitely be clunky if drivers get it wrong is going through the escape chute at that corner there, because you can see just faintly as we followed Samarco going through that chicane is the barriers that those drivers have to negotiate if they run wide, the proper way to go through the corner if you do overshoot it. But that will be very tricky, because those barriers, it's not like a cone or something like that where you can just knock it over. Those barriers will hurt your car quite badly if you just even tap them, so that will be something to watch out for, especially on lap 1.
Yeah, that will certainly be of course the slowdown's going to cost you so much, and yeah, going through those escape routes, very much similar to Monza, but at Monza you can basically just straight line it. Here, no, you're going to get a lot of damage to your car, as you say, so you got to be careful of that. Shall we have a quick look at the championship standings just going into this round? I mean, we've already talked about Sir Marco leading the way on that race win, 140 points currently for him. And then pretty much first down to, well, you can see down to 8 all pro drivers. And then we did have a couple of pro-ams on the top of the pro-ams in last week's round of the championship. Was Adam Starzinski, who managed to beat Christopher Otterholt to the race win. So a strong start for the Polish driver in his ARL debut as well. Turoshki up there, Wells, watch out for him, he's very consistent, as Jack Wells, Castellozzi as well in 5th place. And in the amateur championship, it was David Vey who was able to take the win, and you can see, got a few places between himself and Gordon Hogg. I wouldn't say any of the AM drivers necessarily had a perfect round, but Vey was certainly the standout driver, I think, last time out we on, and you know, he was mixing it up in the top 15 for most of the race, and I think played the percentage as well as, you know, you still want to beat the pro and the pro-ams. There's an incentive when it comes to the point system to do that, but I still think he had the right balance of aggression and passiveness last time.
It's hard trying to think what my driver of the race was last week, but David Vey certainly deserved a mention because he drove flawlessly. For an AM, he was mixing it up with the pro-ams, as you said, and even some of the pros he was actually finishing ahead of. Sure, the pros were involved in quite a few incidents, but still, David Vey put on a fantastic drive. I believe he's currently 33rd in this qualifying session, so we'll have to see if he can replicate the performance tonight, because that was some very gripping stuff that he put on last week, so we'll have to see if he can top the AMs this week. Right now in qualifying it as Moldecleve, who is the highest AM driver, so that'll be a very interesting battle to watch, along with a lot of intriguing battles that pepper the field at Spa, which I believe will carry over quite nicely here at Fuji. Certainly a track that encourages racing. We've seen some fantastic battles at this track whenever it's WEC racing here, or even Formula One back in the late 2000s, I believe it was, 2007, 2008, I believe is when F1 raced here for the last time. And then even back in the day, of course, the other fantastic and dramatic championship finale in 1976, which is one of the all-time classic F1 races. So this track definitely leads itself to some very good battles up and down the field, and with how close this field is, it lends itself to some fantastic racing.
Yeah, that 1976 race, I want to say it was the first race broadcast on British TV. Now, I might be wrong. First race broadcast is live. Let me know on the chat, any Brits, if I'm totally wrong on that one. But as far as I think it was like that. It was a very important season, that for Formula One, because you need rivalries, and it very much increased the awareness of the sports. And yeah, it was a very good season. So the final few times are going to be set, because once you get to 32 minutes, that's it. You can't complete your lap time. So these are the last attempts now for Lasse Sorensen for IGL Coatings. Shout out to Newbie Tubi for supporting Racing Lab out there tonight, as Sorensen moves up to 7th position. Really nice work from him, but it does demonstrate just how strong the lap times from Rosseth and Montini were. Identical lap times, at least to thousands, but clearly Rosseth ahead on tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands potentially, because that's what iRacing goes down to. Fujita also crossing line. He is in 13th position at his home race. Expected a little bit more from Fujita after a strong opening round of the championship to reach the final 18 seconds. And only PJ Claessens, I think, can cross the line, and Claessens, in fact, going back to the pit. So that will be our grid for this round of the championship.
And Samarco grabbing the pole position, touching back on the point that you mentioned a bit earlier with Fujita. Yeah, I was expecting a bit more performance from him, currently in 13th, and as the time runs out, that's where he'll start on the grid.
Yeah, he was, I believe at least, very strong last time. He was 2nd place last time, and usually drivers do have a boost for their home circuit. Usually a bit more incentive for them to practice. Certainly know, for example, PJ Claessens out there is a big fan of the Belgian circuits, but not quite the case for Fujita. Seemingly a little bit, perhaps his race pace will be more competitive later on. There is our grid then for this round of the championship. Antonino Samarco once again on pole position, 3/10 clear. That is a big gap to the rest of the pack. Ahead of Thomas Vangen for IGL Coatings. There's Mateo Kolnagi, another strong performance for G Esports Racing Team. They really have got a monopoly on that top 10. So many drivers performing well once again tonight. There's Emmanuel Oliveri. Eric Rosseth is top of the Pro-Ams, identical lap time to the 1000th to Tommaso Montini. Then behind that was Lasse Sorensen, Anders Meyer, Carl Winkler, Stephen David, Alexander Scaret, Taj Edwards lining up in 12th position. And then we've got Kazuki Fujitsu, Thomas Asfarg, Balazs Tarowski, Kim Andre Borkland, Jack Wells, strong qualifying actually for Wells there, watch out for him. Gordon Hawk, top of the amateur dress, then it's Stuart Wyness, Mats Jestrom Bakken, Kieran Smart, Adam Stasinski, Simon Moldekleed, Marcus Gunzelman in 24th. Watch out for Gunzelman, he'll gain a lot of places. Then it's Willems, De Boiver, Kroll, Crook, Yanko, Engel, Collishaw, Verm, Yanni, Cabral, Bay, and in 35th. Navarro De Boiver in 36th, sorry. And then we've got Pugh, Leo, Clysons, De Vlamic, Bass, Durgaris, Plist, Walsh, Sansom, Larson, and that's all 46 cars. It's a packed field once again. We are soon going to get under the way. And once again, it's a familiar sight for this season. It is a McLaren at the front. The pace car will pull in fairly early, but the green flag will be waved much afterwards. So expect a very long hold and a lot of control as well for Samarco as to where he goes. He doesn't necessarily have to wait for the green flag. He can pretty much go when he wants, but he could leave it all the way to the start-finish line if he so chooses. But he doesn't. He puts his foot down, and we are away here for round 2 of the Apex Racing League GT3 trophy. And already it's 3 wide behind. Good start for Vangen to hold on to that second place seemingly, but behind that it's anyone's up for grabs. And the G Esports Jazz trying to work together. They've been pushed to the outside and trying to make some progress right there. Oliveri holding on to that 4th position for now, but Montini, his teammate, has got past Eric Rosseth, and that is for the lead in the Pro-Ams. Behind that is Sorensen, David and Winkler rounding out the top 10.
That was a fantastic start there from Samarco. He timed it pretty much perfectly, so that was a great start from him. He is currently leading this race by a pretty wide margin, but we're seeing some shuffling all throughout the field. We're seeing nearly 3 wide coming through the long sweeper there. That was some very interesting stuff there with those drivers. Some very tense battling here across the field. What I always love about GT3 racing is a mix of cars always provides some sort of variety when it comes to the side-by-side action. So you'll see BMWs battling against Lamborghinis, as you're seeing now. Some Porsches going 3 wide that we saw in at the very start going down the main straightaway. So that was some very good stuff there. We have an accident there in the back. There's a spinner there, multiple spinners there. I believe that's the Sim Racing Norway teammates. We've got a pile up here, an absolute carnage here. We've got Porsches, we've got BMWs, we've got all kinds of cars spun around, and we've got a traffic jam in the runoff area. I think that driver was trying to serve a slowdown in the middle of the chicane, and they were trying. This is absolute carnage here.
Well, you usually have a few of these per season, and well, that's the first one for this season. Absolute mayhem, and it seemed to be 5 or 6 different accidents, honestly, all coming together at one corner. Hopefully main drivers can continue. They have got a faster pair available, but they will need to take an extra pit stop if they so take it on this first lap. Yannick Willems in 22nd place. He's top of the amateur drivers at the moment, and he is looking to hold on to 22nd place, but it looks like Simone Bianco, who's up 7 places now from his race start, is going to be able to get past, and Bianco has been able to do that. Behind that, we're watching Crook and De Boiver, Collishaw in the orange car, ahead of Engel and Verm and Clysons as well. There goes the move from Dominic Engel. Oh, a spin round for De Boiver. He was having a very good run at it. Of the Jeremy variety, remember, not his brother Navarre, but Jeremy dropped back, fortunately with no damage, unlike many others in this field. But that has undone those early places he had gained.
Tough start for a lot of these amateurs. We saw David Vey was caught up in that accident. We're going to get a replay of the massive accident we had here. Yeah, just Gordon Howe getting spun around by a BMW, giving him an involuntary prostate exam there going into the chicane. So tough break for him, and then just all the drivers starting to pile up there was Gordon Haug spinning around, and there was another accident farther up the road, and then just everyone tried to just basically stop to try and avoid making contact with anyone else, and just create a massive stack up there. So tough start for a lot of those drivers. Very good start here from Antonio Samarco, who grabbed the pole for the second race in a row and is dominating early on.
And Hawk was the one who took pole position as well in the amateur. It was particularly bad for him. I think it may have been Stuart Wyness who gave him the tap. I did see Wyness immediately drop back. And then when Wyness was trying to rejoin, he got wiped out by a separate incident. So maybe some karma there, albeit either way, Bounty could well be going his way, along with some other drivers. It was a very clean spa round. It's a shame to see that at the start of this Fuji round, but it is something to expect, especially seeing that we had all 40 cars pretty much still together going through the first half lap, because the first few corners were ever so clean. Fujita up 1 place so far. Stephen David down 3 places. He's a little bit detached from these guys, but there goes Fujita. He's up 2 places now. He's got past Alexander Scaret. Next up is Taj Edwards. He had a very strong Spa round. Really great to see Taj back in the championship, very much a veteran of ARL, making his debut some 4 years ago in Apex Racing League. And he is there in 10th place, albeit getting a little bit detached, as have pretty much everyone else from Samarco. We've got a pack from 2nd down to 9th, but the race leader is in a league of his own, as was the case.
In that pack right now, you've actually got 2 Pro-Am competitors. You've got Montini currently running in 5th and Roseth running in 7th, so very good start for those drivers. They were tied in qualifying, as you saw a bit earlier on in this stream. But still, that's some pretty good starts from those drivers. They're still maintaining their position. They're still running in a pretty good spot right now. They're 1 and 2 right now in Pro-Am, but right now they're caught up in a pretty big peloton, as you can see, just a massive pack of cars. And at a track like this, where this long front straightaway is just a total slipstream train, I think you'll see a lot of these packs be the source of a lot of chaos, as they stretch out a little bit going down the other straightaway, then compress right back up in that very heavy braking zone going into turn 1. So we're seeing some more battling here. That's Starzinski right now getting passed by Smart, and he's currently involved in a battle. He's the Pro-Am driver, and he's nearly in a well, he is in a sandwich pretty much with 2 pro drivers there. That was some nice battling there. That's Gunzelman, who was one of the farther back drivers of the pro starters. I believe he was starting maybe down in the top, well, outside the top 30. I could be mistaken with that, but he definitely started towards the rear end of the field. So right now he has made up some pretty good spots. You can see 5 positions so far. Some pretty good stuff from him so far. Right now he is struggling to get past Starzinski though, and then after Starzinski there is more Pro-Am competitors. Right now you can see a train of Pro-Am drivers on the live timing screen from 14th all the way down to Starzinski in 18th, and then Gunzelman, Smart, and Dreshtenbakken in the 3 pro drivers tailing that Pro-Am pack.
Yeah, Gunzelman started certainly lower down than what we expected. Driver in the Apex Racing League, or the ASUS Apex Racing League Endurance Championship, of course, and a part of course in racing. You expect to see them up in the top 10. And Gunzelman, of course, a pro driver, so it was surprising. Along with Smart, to be fair, of course, former champion in the Apex Racing League, but be quite as far down as he was. There has been a bit of changes, by the way. Martini and Meyer just swapping back positions, but pretty much all the same on that. Let's see if there's going to be any changes into turn 1 amongst these 4. They're all just about evenly spaced, and it will be a bit of a normal affair. But that battling that we saw on the previous lap lost them a lot of time, best part of a second and a half. And Yannick Willems, who is still top of the amateur drivers, up 3 places from his race start, up 2 places in the amateur category from his race start. He is closing in slightly, and he would love to join the back of that trio in order to help him get away from Christopher Crook, who's got a little bit of damage of himself.
That'll be very interesting if we can see an amateur driver score another top 20 for 2 races in a row. That'd be some fantastic stuff to see if that can happen. So that'll be a big storyline to follow. Right now we're seeing Clayson's very far off the pace. He must have had a big moment coming out of the corner there, which I was going to touch on this in the pre-race jibber jabber that we had, how sometimes, at least from my experience driving this track, the other curbs, let alone the other sausage curbs, which will obviously wreck your day if you hit them in a bad way, but coming out of some of these corners, specifically coming out of the third corner, which will be a one to watch throughout this race, a lot of the curbs it's like they're painted with like oil or something like that. They're really slippery. So from my experience driving the Audi earlier in this race, earlier in this day, I had a few very tense moments getting like half spins or full spins, just dropping a wheel off on that curb. So it will be interesting to see how these drivers negotiate the curbs. Certainly don't want to touch the yellow sausage curbs. But right now we're seeing some very tense battling here. This is I believe this is all amateur drivers here. Right now we've got Leo, who we're following now in the BMW. It's nice we have two Porsches and a BMW, so we got German battle here. Leo is looking everywhere. He's looking down the inside. Not a lot of space to work with, but he's going to have a really deep lunge on the brakes. Made contact there with De Boyer, so that'll be a position gain from him, but actually a position loss, I believe, as Moldecleve got past, but actually not as Leo. He's going to have the inside line here coming through turn 3, and those drivers are still going side by side. Might be going 3 wide in a little bit here. This is some fantastic stuff here.
Yeah, Moldecleve eventually getting past. There's not going to be any response, and has a chance as well to pull away because Leo was extremely tight when he went into the hairpin. One of the sort of unchanged corners on this circuit since its revamp a couple of decades ago. And still De Boyer trying to respond. His relative hasn't had a particularly good round. Jeremy was running well in the category, but spun by himself. Very much trying to take up the slack. But it's not happening for him quite at the moment, but that is wide from Leo, and now can get the cutback, can De Boyer, and that is nicely done. The problem is overtaking around this part of the circuit does leave you vulnerable down that 1.6 kilometer straight, which is going to occur in just a couple of corners' time. The man in the best position is Stuart Wyness, I believe at least, was the start of all the mayhem at the chicane earlier on in this race at lap 1, our biggest shunt of the season so far. But he's still going. He hasn't needed to take a pit stop or anything, and he could gain 2 places here because he's got a terrific slipstream. The inside line is very much open for him, and as long as he's just that little bit deep on the brakes, he should be able to get the pad though. It didn't happen, however. They were slightly deep on the brakes in front. However, that is good control from Leo to be able to try to hold it. Eventually though, Wyness with the better exit. He's up to 30 seconds.
Leo got a bit loose coming out of the first corner, so that allowed Stuart Wyness to get the position there. So that was, yeah, I believe you might be right when you say that Wyness was the prohibitor of at least one part of the absolute carnage that we saw that corner there, the other chicane on lap 1. So we're seeing some more corners there. That's contact there with Rosseth, yeah. Rosseth tried to go down the inside, and he's going to hit the inside wall, pick up a little bit of damage. His bumper is a bit loose, at least that might have been a glitch on my screen, but tough break for Rosseth. He was running up in the top 5, I believe. I believe he was running 4th or 5th. That was a very good start from him. So right now he's going to crater down to 22nd. He might actually lose a couple more positions as he is. Gets passed by Crook and Willems. He's going 3 wide there. There's a nice battle here. 3 wide with the Porsches going into the final corner. That's some very close stuff there. Those drivers might have made a little bit of contact, but Rosa, very tough break for him. He might have picked up some damage from that, just a slight tap against the inside wall, but I don't think it's going to be enough to drag him into the pits at this early stage of the race.
Such a shame, it lost him so much time. Look at that, they're merging into one another. We've seen some absolutely humongous crashes in the sim and in real world on this straight, and that was nearly another one of them. 207 diving every which way. That's Paul Collershot. Collershot's going to get in place there. Brilliant stuff from him. Crook dropping though a couple of places. That's a little bit out of position because these drivers around him have all had issues, whether it was a poor qualifying lap or whether it was a spin, whether they were taken out earlier on, and are making their way back through. PJ Clyson's always awful in qualifying. He actually qualified well back at Spa, and then he crashed anyway, so wasn't really able to use it. He looks like a challenge, does the Belgian driver. He's up to 24th place, up 15 places from his race start. No one in front of him has gained anywhere near that many places. Only driver who's gained more places is Kettle Larsen up 16 places. But he is a few places back. Here is this battle, which has been going on for absolutely ages. And it's Sorensen ahead of Montini. Montini now with a comfortable gap in the Pro-Ams as it stands. But Sorensen able to get one position on him. And next up will be Carl Winkler, who's got an awesome run. But Winkler having to pull out of the slipstream very on, gets alongside. I think it might be Kazuki Fujita. That's the best run on any of these drivers.
Rough couple laps for the drivers that were running 1-2 in the Pro-Am category. We saw Roseth had that mistake towards the other end of the lap a couple laps ago, and now we're seeing Montini get swallowed up here. Looks like he's going to drop about 4 positions in the span of about a couple of corners. Actually, no, there's a driver going very deep. That was Sorensen there. Went really deep. He went super deep there, but he still manages to hold on to the position. I say that this is not over yet. He actually does get past there. I believe that was Winkler. Actually, no, that was Fujita. My apologies. That went past him with a beautiful move around the outside at turn 3. So that will be a fantastic move. Definitely one of the highlights from the race so far. But this is chaos here. You're seeing Montini go down the inside there of Winkler. Looked for the move, but at a corner like that, which is really tight, where there's not really too much room to go side by side, that was some very tight stuff there. But Montini, it looks like he's not done yet. He might get passed here by Edwards, who looks down the outside. That was very close there. I believe that was very close to contact there, or actually was contact as they went on the brakes going into the Grand Prix chicane. So that's some very tense racing there. We're seeing Gestenbakken in the pits. He had some kind of incident, so we'll get a replay here.
Yeah,
towards the middle section of the track. Whoop.
Yeah, hardware failure
issue
for Gestenbakken. Shame. Yeah, he's pretty much back to the pits. Might still get out there because you do need to score. Do you need to complete, or you need to finish within 6 laps of the race winner in order to score points. So you need to get to about the 50-minute mark in order to score points. So we'll see if Gestenbakken wants to get back out there. Of course, could be important for the teams later on if they are going for the title this season. But it's incredible few laps for Fujita. He didn't make a whole lot of progress in the first couple of laps, but up 3 places pretty much in one go at turn 1 that last time round. And he's up to 6th place. However, he is 12 seconds off the race lead and some 4 seconds off the top 5 as well. So it doesn't look like he's going to be able to back up his podium from round 1. As Kieran Smart comes into the pits, and, well, this is too early, unfortunately, to get to the end of the race. 60% fuel tank limit, and so I think this pit for repairs isn't going to get him to the end of the race. There was some contact that he had. Was there secondary contact? There was. And of course that has absolutely done in this job.
Yeah, that was pretty much self-inflicted damage there from Kirsten Smart, and we see Gestenbakken. That's probably why it probably wasn't hardware failure. He was maybe just had too much damage and decided to tow back to the pits. I could be wrong. He was still rolling, but tough break there from Kieran Smart. So both of those drivers involved in incidents. Very tough break for those drivers. That was really self-inflicted damage, though, from Kieran Smart. He rear-ended the driver that was ahead of him, spun, didn't hold the brakes, and cost him dearly there. Of course, in these cars, it's not like an open wheeler or something like that when you can hold the brakes and just lock up all 4s. In a car like this, which does have ABS, you can't really lock up the brakes, but still, Kieran Smart kind of definitely played himself there. It's a tough break for him. He's currently running well outside the top 30, so it's definitely going to be a rough evening for him there. But right now, we're seeing some very tense racing here right inside the top 30. That's another mistake there from Winus. Another mistake from the other Track Scotland teammates. We saw Kieran Smart was involved in that incident that we just saw. And Winus is involved in another mistake. We saw him involved in the incident on lap 1 where he punted Gordon Howe. So very tough break for that team so far.
Yeah, they're not that far away from one now, are they? So could see a renewal of that fight. I know Stuart, to be fair, is an extremely bad driver, but such a mess into that chicane. Everyone breaking so early. An understandable mistake that he seemingly made. We'll let the stewards be the deciders of whether a penalty is warranted. Everyone taking alternative lines through turn 1 again. It's almost impossible to defend into turn 1 because it's such a wide circuit. You can always go further to the inside, and if you do cover right to the inside, well, then you're just going to kill your run. And that wasn't a good run either for KBR because Hawk is past. And this is a good run at the moment for Hawk. He is some 17 seconds off the amateur lead. Not sure if he'll get all the way up there, but he's not going to be too far off by the end of this race with the rate he is going to. Vlamic as well, getting past Cabral, who after a strong start is starting to lose a few of those places, but he's still diving one way and then the other. He's got to defend against Pew next. He's going to try to go the long way round at the chicane. We have seen this pulled off before. They're all super slow. That's Paul Joseph Clist trying to get involved as well in that Olympus esports livery. And of course, Stuart Wynett, after the various issues he's had, he's now onto the back as well. And whenever I see a train like this, I always think front car in a very tricky position. Because once again, we start the charge on the pit straight.
Whenever I see a train like this, I think of the Radical Racing Challenge, which tends to show off a lot of these trains. I know you're involved in that at the other Jerez round this past Friday, so seeing some pelotons develop throughout this field and some very close racing from a lot of these drivers. It's some beautiful looking paint schemes. I don't know if it might just be me preferring colorful paint schemes, but I really like the look of Paul Joseph Clist's car, and he's putting together a very good race right now. Qualified towards the back, but is currently running a 36th, up 7 positions so far. He actually might lose one here, as it looks like YNS goes down the inside and pulls off that move. YNS, he is down 17 positions so far. It's a very tough race for that driver there, but we're seeing some very interesting battles. There's some more battling here between Cabral there and Pew. Those drivers going side by side through turn 3. We'll see some attempted overtakes there. We have seen some overtakes, just period, going through that corner, but it's not really a corner where you can go side by side through fairly cleanly. A corner like that where it's very tight, very fast, and not a lot of room to work with if you do exit the corner, where you're pretty much just kissing the curb if you're going through the racing line. So we might see some drivers get forced off there. We might see some fisticuffs break out here on the other iRacing simulator here as those drivers try and battle through turn 3. Certainly an area where you expect to see some battles after the other drop down coming through turn 1, where a lot of drivers try and look for an overtake. So that'll be intriguing to watch throughout this race, how those drivers attempt and try and strategize an overtake as they try and go through turn 3.
Let's tune back in with our race leaders. Well, Samarco is our absolute race leader, 5.4 seconds clear. I mean, if he keeps up this rate, you could see a race victory by 15 seconds, which would be absolutely remarkable. And in a championship where, really, when it comes to the I ratings, no one stands up. No drivers above 6.3k for this season. Samarco definitely should be higher than that. There he is, 6.1. You got Maya there, former Porsche Cup Pro-Am champion and LMP2 Pro champion as well at 6.2. Thomas Cope as well with a pretty good I rating, but I don't think he's out there tonight. Yeah, there's some pretty strong drivers in this series. But Samarco is absolutely outperforming them as it stands. I'm sure that I rating will be getting close to the 8k, honestly, if he can continue this pace, because the dominance he has showed definitely indicates that he deserves that, albeit it might be that the plan is a bit more temperamental when he visits circuits later on in the season, perhaps more technical tracks. It might be a bit more Larry and maybe not give him quite the confidence they clearly had in the first couple of rounds. Behind him, of course, Fangen, and then we've got this Oliveri Kalani battle, but they are teammates for G Esports. These drivers are not teammates there. Remember, Fujita overtook Sorensen earlier on in the race, but it's like the IGL Ratings driver wants to get back past the Orion Race Team driver if he can possibly do so.
Looks like he's just too far away to look for a move there on Fujita going into turn 1, but he might have a good run here. Those drivers actually had a pretty even keel run, but it looks like Sorensen is still very close. He closed up a little bit going through turn 1, so we might see some action going into the chicane. Definitely some action, I feel, going into turn 1 on the next lap, so that'll be nice to see some battling there. At the beginning of the race, I was going to mention how the field up towards the front was a bit shuffled. You had some Pro-Am drivers sprinkled in with the Pro drivers, so I was going to mention that early on in the race, but as we're now about 22 and a half minutes into this race, you can see the top 8 competitors right now are all Pro drivers, and this man up at the front of the Pro-Am category, Montini, he is the highest running Pro-Am driver. He was up towards the front of the field. I believe he was running like 5th early on this race, so that was a fantastic start from him. I believe was the highest starter in the Pro-Am field, and of course had his competitor and main rival Roseth have a mistake early on this race. So certainly, I wouldn't say it's plain sailing though, as he has Edwards behind him, the 10th place runner overall, the 9th of the Pro-Am drivers, hopefully trying to join the Pro-Am, the Pro Pack up towards the front of this field. And then you have Alexander Scaret, who is currently running 11th overall, 2nd in the Pro-Am category, so he'll try and look for a move here. It looks like he has a pretty good start. He's very close to Edwards right now, so it will be nice to see some battling here. I believe he actually dropped back a little bit. One thing I might mention at this stage of the race is how much of an effect will fuel saving play at this stage of the race, because he said that these drivers will have to make a pit stop. Even though it's only 60 minutes long, the fuel tank capacity is limited to 60%, so in a race like this, I gotta wonder if fuel saving might come into an effect, as we saw last week when Samarco, driving that fairly fuel-hungry McLaren, had to pit probably about 5 or 6 minutes much later than the other BMWs that were running behind him, and those were the only laps that he didn't lead all day, so we'll have to see what happens there with fuel saving. What do you think, Sam, at this stage of the race? Do you think these drivers are fuel saving?
Yeah, I think a few of them are. If you're in the drafts, I think they will be. I think if they're in clear air, they'll just be pushing as hard as possible. But lots of Oliveri and Colnagi, I'm sure, are working together by taking the draft. Of course, you can get to the end of the race now. From this point, Montini round, and that's going to be... Apologies, it's Edwards round. It was contact with Montini. Edwards was trying to get past, and Montini has lost now the Pro-Am lead to Alexander Scaret, but he's trying to hold on to it. But this is all fairly irrelevant right now if they are still within a few tenths of one another going on to the main straight. Look at the queue of cars behind them. Asfalg, David, Auckland, and Turoski, and Wells as well. I mean, Wells is always very good when it comes to the race as it progresses on. He's right in there on the back of this train. He looked dangerous in qualifying. The fact that he was as high up as he was. Here comes Scaret, dipping into the draft. Is there going to be any defensive move from Montini, who's already had contact just a few moments ago? Scaret trying to go for a bit of a bluff there. He does go for it. He stops it on the apex. Montini turns out of the corner, and Scaret leads in the Pro-Am category. It may not be enough for him to break the draft, and it has only more invited Asfalg and David behind. But let's find out what happened originally, because this was Edwards, in fact actually ahead, apologies, was behind Montini. Montini ran wide and very similar to Matt Hamilton in 2008. There was contact, but I must say I think Edwards probably turned in there. Montini was never gone.
I think that was just some very close, hard racing at a section like that where it's really close, as we see Montini is trying to defend from Scaret. He actually managed to get past. Yeah, that was interesting. And now Scaret is trying to get the move done on Montini. That was very close, very similar to what we saw with Montini and Edwards a couple laps ago. But now those drivers get through cleanly, and Scaret takes the lead in the Pro-Am category. But yet again, I think Montini is going to be in the catbird seat as they go onto the straightaway. But also, you can look, Asfalg has now joined this battle in the BMW. You can see him right behind. Certainly not as close to Montini as Montini is to Scaret, but still some very close stuff here. We'll have to see how those drivers exit that corner. It's a very muted exit, I would say. Definitely a track limit deterrent there with a giant killer yellow sausage curbs of doom there on the outside of the course. But right now we're seeing the battle here in the Pro-Am category. This is really the most heated battle we've seen so far, and as we reach the midway point of this race soon enough, we'll definitely see a lot of these battles start to heat up a little bit. Montini looked for the outside. He's going to try and go for the switchback move there on Scaret. That would be very close. Those drivers are definitely going to be side by side. Oh no, they actually aren't. I was going to say that they're going to be side by side going into turn 3, but they managed to stay single file with Scaret taking the lead again while actually maintaining the lead. And now we're seeing some battling here farther back in the Pro-Am category, farther back in this peloton. Right now we're seeing a BMW, Porsche, and Mercedes battle. We're seeing German civil war here between a lot of these competitors with pretty different looking cars, all running in the other Pro-Am category. That is very close. It looks like Looks like Tarotsky and the BMW there did not have a very good exit and was not able to get the move done on Kemandre Bjorklund there, but it looks like he's going to go for the move down the inside. That will be very close. It's very close to contact there, but Kemandre Bjorklund is going to maintain that position. That's a very tough corner to try and make a move on, but going into this section here, it always lends itself to some very good hard racing, as you have pretty flowing section. It might feel a bit clunky in some cars, but when you're trying to battle, you have one section where you're going to be stuck on the outside like here, and then you're going to have the inside here going into the final corner, which is definitely one of the most important on the circuit. So we'll have to see. Looks like he was looking for the move there down the inside of Kemandre Bjorklund, but at a corner like that where there is another sausage curb on the inside there that you definitely don't want to hit, because if you just touch those slightly at a bad angle, as I proved when I was driving the Audi R8 earlier, that'll play havoc to your car and your race for a lot of these drivers. So we're going to see some very close battling here. We saw Kemandre Bjorklund go to the inside wall there, trying to break the slipstream. Those drivers are going to go side by side. Going into turn one, Kemandre Bjorklund is going to maintain that position, but he's going to have... It's not over yet. It looks like Tarotsky is going to... It looked like he was going to try and go for the switchback move, but those drivers are still battling quite hard, and Kemandre Bjorklund maintains that 13th position overall. But now Wells is going to be involved in this battle. It'll be interesting to see if he gets involved. And now we're seeing Montini, who must have had some kind of slide coming out of the third corner. He's now involved in this battle too. This is some fantastic stuff here, Sam.
Yeah, I think it was a slowdown for Montini. He was slow coming out of turn one as he really cuts off Bjorklund there. That was risky stuff for our former Pro-Am leader, but how it has gone very south for Montini as this race has gone on. And it just seems like he's second best in so many of these battles. And again, for the third time in what feels like 5 laps, he is alongside through the chicane. And this time he is all right in it, but it seems to just be a downwards momentum for Montini. And rather than fighting with Skuretz and Asphalt for the Pro-Am lead, he is just trying to stay on the Pro-Am rostrum as it stands, with Bjorklund, Churowski and Wells close behind, and even Edwards as well, gaining time on these drivers, seeing that he is in clean air in the 39s. A few of these guys in the 41s as it stands. So quite the pace difference halfway through this race now. And yeah, still about 5 minutes away from when we're expecting most drivers to make their pit stops.
I'm sure at this point in the race, as we're seeing some very fantastic stuff here towards the front, well, towards the last podium position here in the Pro-Am category, a battle between the Porsches. I'm sure at this stage of the race, Montini is probably wishing he had some Tag Heuer logos on his car so he wouldn't crack under pressure, but he is under a lot of pressure at this point. He was definitely involved in a lot of pressure when he had a few mistakes there and got involved in that incident there with Edwards, who is now closing in on this pack here. But right now, he's holding on to that last podium position in the Pro-Am category, 13th overall, actually 12th overall, my apologies. He is holding on to that for dear life at this point. So right now, he's currently third of the Pro-Am drivers, but if he makes a small little mistake here or lets these drivers go through and kind of push him off the line, he could be looking at dropping like a rock in the Pro-Am standings. So that'll be tough to see. I'm sure Montini is driving his heart out, trying to hold on to that position, holding on for dear life as Bjorklund is trying to put a lot of pressure on the back of Montini. So that'll be tough to see, and we'll see Tarotsky involved in that battle as well, but he has dropped back a tiny bit. He's now under pressure from Wells, so we've got a whole lot of pressure building here. Don't call the people that are involved in the Titan submarine disaster, because otherwise they might not know how to handle the pressure there. So this will be some very tough stuff to watch in these next few couple laps.
Yeah, reminded that our amateur leader at the moment still Yannick Willems, still leading the way there, and Christopher Crook and Simon Muldercleave rounding out the top 3 in our amateurs. You can see them, well, at least the top 2 of them on the left side of your screen. You can also check out the, so I thought that was a car crashing into the wall. No, they were just going to the pit entry. PJ Chrysler is into the pits. I think a lot of drivers will be pitting at the end of this lap. Also Stasinski as well. He just had a very poor lap. I think we might be about to find out what happened to Stasinski. Was he pushed, or did he lose it by himself? It looks like it was a push. Maybe netcode. I'm sure that's what the Porsche will argue. But either way, it has resulted in some lost positions for the SLM Motorsport driver. as our race leader is just entering the final sector of the lap at the moment. Well, he's more than halfway through it, in fact. I think he may well be in on this lap, seeing that he hasn't had anyone to drag him along for this thing. He's been having to punch a hole in the air for the entire time, but it looks like actually he's going to be able to push it one more lap, is Antonino. And with that 8-second lead there he currently has, he has a few options as to what he can do. Not too many battles going on. There is a battle actually for 20th position. Ketil Larsen ahead of Paul Collishaw, Christopher Crook and Dominic Engel. Now up 7 places, but still not making a whole lot of pressure. Time up is the core sim racing driver. You can see just generally that the field spread isn't that much. Certainly from about 9th down to 25th. They're all sort of slaloming through those final few corners right now.
One driver that I think we should note, who we saw hit the wall earlier in the race, is Roseth, who's currently running an 18th overall. He was involved in that small little incident there where he hit the inside wall, I believe, coming out of chicane. So right now he's running an 18th. He was dropped down all the way to like 36th, I believe. So he's made a fantastic recovery, as we're seeing a lot of drivers file into the pits. This is a very tough pit entry here, trying to scrub off speed while going through that chicane. If you make a small little mistake there going through that chicane, you're going to get a one-way ticket to the Armco barrier. But we're seeing drivers flood into the pits now, and I believe we might see some Marco come into the pits at the end of this lap, because I'm sure we saw last week in Spa how that McLaren might be a bit fuel thirsty, especially compared to some of the other BMWs that we've seen throughout this field. But who knows, maybe Samarco has just been so superior on pace that he's just been kind of lifting off, trying to save some gas, and he might try and stretch it a little bit. Right now we're 34 minutes into this race, over halfway through at this point, so we will definitely see pit stops come in the next few minutes. We're going to see a mass exodus of drivers coming from the racetrack into the pits, so we'll have to see if Samarco is part of that pack very soon.
Yep, level up. So a little bit further than I thought, actually. But he's got a few back markers now in front of him, but he can really take his time. Vangen, though, has had to come into the pit, so it demonstrates that the McLaren actually has pretty good fuel consumption, seemingly, or as you were saying, of course, maybe he has just been easing off. Certainly his lap times don't suggest that, because he has been rapid throughout. Oliveri into the pits, Colnagy being able to stay up there. Of course, him and Colnagy and Oliveri and his teammates, they were very much in the draft of one, and it's really surprised that one was able to go a bit further. As Valg now leader of the Pro-Ams, because we had Alexander Skiret come into the pits. There's going to be a change between these drivers. Turoski, Wells, Bjorklund. Wells has got past and is able to take a very normal line. Bjorklund a bit unsettled by taking as much curve as he did through turn 1. Wasn't able to make an assault on the Hungarian driver ahead of him. Wells now 8 places from his overall start, albeit he will lose 4 or 5 of them when the pit stops are made. It's likely on this tour of the circuit. And leader of the drivers who have made a pit stop, Thomas Vangen, who was 2nd place, is down to 18th.
We'll probably have to wait for about 5 or maybe 10 minutes even until we can get a firm grasp of how the field looks after all the pit stops shuffle up the field, because we saw last race in Spa how some of these drivers can stretch the fuel a lot more than others. We saw, I believe it was Fujita, one of the last drivers to come into the pits in his BMW. He was very good on fuel throughout that race, and we're seeing Samarco come in now very hard going through that chicane, but he manages to hold on and fouls into the pits with an 11-second lead over Colnaghi. So we'll have to see how that gap develops, how that gap turns into once the pit stops are over. So Colnaghi is going to take the lead. Actually, no, he isn't. That's Meyer taking the lead. So he takes the lead of this race as the other drivers ahead of him file into the pits. Once again, it's a BMW that's managing to stretch the fuel. I've got to wonder if the BMWs are the most fuel efficient in the field. That would be a very good question to figure out the answer for, which will definitely answer a lot of the questions that we've seen as these pit stops come up in these races.
We've got a couple of Mercedes continuing as well, Winkler and Wells. Albeit Wells has been in the draft the entire stint. I mean, it's not really much of a surprise, that one. Carl Winkler, another impressive performance from him. I mean, it's absolutely what we expect from Winkler, and one of the highest I-rated drivers. I feel like he's necessarily going to be the fastest at many rounds. Might be able to sneak in a race victory or two, especially when we get to the reverse grid races. But you absolutely know that he's just going to be able to hammer in those points. And if the likes of Samarco have off rounds, He'll be one of the main drivers to pick up the pieces. So it's still Samarco leading out of the drivers who have pitted. He's 9 seconds ahead of Vangen. So that gap hasn't really changed due to the pit stops. We're expecting the likes of Meyer to come up behind Vangen, somewhere between Vangen and Kornaji. Kornaji third place out of the drivers who have pitted. Verm still yet to pit along with the top 7 drivers as it stands. Still top of the, well, yeah, we'll see how it turns out. But top of the amateur drivers is still Yannick Willem. So it looks like he's held on through all of these pit stop cycle. And second place is still Christopher Cook as well, as Mai comes into the pit. Slightly unusual line. I think he got it all stopped. And he will want to be coming out ahead of Kornaji if he possibly can. But it might be a little bit tight between those two drivers.
I think that's going to be a very tight battle between Myers, Kornaji, and Fujita as well. I think Fujita has probably a bit disappointed in how his race has gone so far. We saw he was in a fairly dominant second place throughout most of that race, certainly running in the podium positions throughout all of it in Spa last week. And right now he's currently running in 12th overall, so we'll have to see how everything shakes out once all the pit stops are done. But he's still, I mean, he's still running towards the front of the field, but I'm sure it's definitely a bit of a downgrade compared to how he must have felt last week when he grabbed a pretty impressive podium, pretty surefire podium. I'm sure at his home track, you could say, the only race in the schedule in Japan, I believe. So I'm sure he'll want to get a better result than just like a mere top 5 or top 10. So I'm sure he's definitely going to push it towards the end of this race. And I have a real interesting question that I don't think we've seen the answer for. Actually, I believe we might have. Have any of these drivers pit for tires? Because we were a bit surprised last week when we saw some drivers change tires, because we were fully expecting the drivers to run all 75 minutes on the same set of tires that they started with. But I don't believe the drivers have actually changed tires in this race so far.
So I think some of them did. I saw Mai go up on the jacks, but I saw Jack Wells stay on the ground. So yeah, again, it's a bit of a split strategy. You can take just rear tyres. It seems to be quite a popular one back at Spa, which is a bit surprising because I tend to think Spa is a bit more of a front limited circuit. You've got a lot of high speed corners around that track, but taking rear tyres giving you a bit more stability. So yeah, it's not a consensus certainly amongst the drivers, but we have had a few different strategies. Of course, the tyres and the fuel taken at the same time, and you can take 2 tyres before the fuel gets in, so it's no time penalty. It just can scupper your balance is the only thing, but a decent amount of fuel needed for this race. So yeah, you do get those 2 changes if you so want them. Fujita managing to jump Oliveri in that pit stop, so Maya was way ahead of Kornaji in the end. So he did too have a bit of a gap, and he's actually extended that gap with Maya a whole lot away from Vangen either. So do watch out for second and third later on. But Kornaji now with Fujita behind him. Of course, Kornaji and Oliveira were nose to tail for the entirety of the first half hour of this race. But Fujita has upset that now. And you could get a 4th position out of this, which would be a good effort considering that he started all the way back in 13th position. And has arguably been the second fastest driver tonight. Fujita just has not had the qualifying that he needed to really give himself a good chance. Elsewhere, Asfalg, now leader of the Pro-Ams. He's got ahead of Scarrett. He's 1.7 seconds ahead. He actually had a 5-second quicker pit stop than Alexander Scarrett, which is unusual. Scarrett, 21 seconds. That's 5 seconds longer than pretty much everyone else. As Montini, on the comeback, he has overtaken Wells there. So Montini, after some dreadful laps, really had an awful sort of 10-minute spell earlier on in this race. He's back up to 11th position now overall, and that's a legitimate 11th position. He's got past Wells, but now he's having to do this racecraft game, which he was coming off second best on several occasions earlier on in the event.
There's going to be some very hard battling here, and if you see Edwards at the tail end of this small little pack here, we saw Montini and Edwards had an incident going through the chicane a couple, probably about 10 minutes ago at this point, so that'll be nice to see what happens between those 2 drivers. Might see some a bit of hard racing, I'm sure, Edwards. I mean, all these drivers race each other clean, but if you got pushed off the track earlier by a driver that you're now battling, you might not give them the same breaks that you'd give another person. So That'll be a intriguing battle in a couple laps, but right now it's the main battle is between Montini and Wells. Wells, I think he's too far back of Montini to try and get a run coming out of the final corner, going down the main straightaway and going into turn 1, so I don't believe he'll be close enough, but we've seen some far back dive bombs in this race. We've seen some brilliant moves going into turn 1, but one thing we've also seen a lot of is a lot of drivers overshooting that first corner, which at a track like this and a corner like that, where exiting turn 1 is pretty important because you have a fairly long straightaway, fairly long flat out section before you go into turn 3. It's interesting to see what drivers try and play the risk versus reward game as they try and go for a move going into turn 1. If you go too deep, you're going to have a terrible run coming out of the corner, and you might screw yourself going into turn 3. But at the same time, we've seen a lot of drivers go very deep on the brakes, having a lot of confidence in their car, and they've gone for some very brilliant moves. We might see a brilliant move here from Edwards, who is right towards the back of Wells' car. That is very close between those two drivers, Wells in the Mercedes and Edwards in the BMW. Some inter-car battling here, which I always love in GT3 racing. That'll be close to see how these drivers can stay pretty much nose to tail. If they can stay nose to tail, if Edwards can stay close to the back of Wells' car, we might see some overtakes going into turn 1. That'll be very intriguing to watch indeed.
BJ Clyson's with incidents, and he's collided with Ethan Bass. No, hang on, that's who is that? I think that's a back marker actually. It's Colin Sampson, who's a lap down. So something happening between those two drivers. Let's have a check what happened. Clyson's catching up very quickly. There's Samson ahead. Samson dropped it by himself as Clyson's going to the back of him. Clyson's, yeah. Well, Clyson's going into the back, but Samson did seem to almost decelerate on the apex just when you expect the car ahead to accelerate. So you can understand why Clyson's was confused. And he's down to 26th place. That's our highest gainer, I believe. So he's not in the highest gainer, actually. Kettle Larson now, 27 places. He's passed most of the cars out there. And a fantastic profile picture as well from Ketzel. Always great support from the IGL Coatings drivers. Know that there's a few supporters of that team in the YouTube chat. And of course, big shout out to one of our sponsors for this event as well, Virtual Racing School. Thanks to them for supporting the championship. Of course, Virtual Racing School offering fantastic data packs for many different cars on iRacing from some of the best coaches in the world of sim racing as well. However, they are also in the hardware game as well with their fantastic VRS Direct Force Pro pedals, which are used by many professional drivers, along with, of course, the ESR R1 competition as well. Yeah, many teams, including Apex Racing Team, when it comes to esports events. Of course, they've also got their wheel base and their wheel rim as well, so do check out VRS.racing for more information on that, or apexracingsim.com. Links are in the description. We tune in with Cesar Sobral, who I feel like, no disrespect to Cabral, but we have only seen him drop positions so far. He had a very good start, and he's sort of just been overtaken ever since. He's got Soren Kroll moving past him. That was 4:36.
I've got to wonder how much the pit stop cycle played a bit of an effect into him dropping through the field, because I think earlier in the race he was running towards the other, at least in the middle of the Pro-Am field. I believe he was running at least in the top 30. Right now he's running in 37th, so very bad couple of laps for him. He's part of the drivers in the other lap down section of the field, so a lot of the drivers that you see a lap down and towards the rear of the field were involved in that incident. This driver here, Stuart Winus, kind of started off that incident. It was definitely multiple incidents happening, and it happened into the chicane as he was battling with Gordon Haug. He gave him a bit of a tap there, and it created a bit of chaos there on lap 1. But right now he is running in 40th, battling with Walsh there. That is some very close battling with those drivers, and they managed to get through cleanly going through the chicane. And we'll see some battling, hopefully, as long as Winus gets a very good run coming through these final corners. And looks like he's going to try and go for it. And looked like he was going to try and go for it. Going into the final corner, probably not the smartest place to try and overtake, because if you just hold on to your stuff and focus on getting a good run out of the final corner, you could try and get the move done. Going down the straightaway, you can see Walsh is just a sitting duck here as Winus goes to the outside, nearly in the grass there from the looks of it. That is some very close battling there, and he manages to get the position on Walsh, but it looks like Walsh is going to tuck into the slipstream
Ooh,
of
issue for
Winus. It's
Cornagi.
close here.
Oh, and there's a tap as well. Ines going wide, but he's got the position anyway. But Cornagi has had a problem. He was overtaken. In fact, Fujita overtook Cornagi. Oliveira has been able to get past the pair of them, and Cornagi has gone from 4th down to 8th in quick succession. And it was only just ahead of that fight. He was probably down into turn 1. And Fujita's now had a secondary incident. Well, the man who looked like 4th position was coming to him from outside the top 10 at one point. Well, it's all gone negatively for him, and he may well have a rematch now with Cornagi. And this is what happened between the Japanese and Italian driver. Cornagi going for, or holding the inside line. There's contact here. Fujita never got out of it, and Cornagi sort of closed the line. But once you get that first bit of contact, it just drags the car on the inside wide. So very much hesitant to call blame one for the other. But then there was a second incident for Fujita as he was overtaken by Cornagi's teammate, Oliveira. And it was by himself, maybe on a downshift, maybe under braking, and the Orion Race team giving up many places which he had worked so hard to gain. And as Meyer has now had an incident as well, and he's on his roof. What an impact that is. And I wonder, is that something to do with those curves which you identified right at the start of the race?
Inside sausage curb, I think. Well, we got a replay here. You see the other curbs on the outside there, but there's one curb here on the inside that sneaks up on you as you go around this blind corner, and yep, there you go. I'm not sure what to give him in style points because he can't really get a good view of the landing there, but still multiple flips taking him out of contention. Very tough for him. We're going to get another replay here, this time on the inside. We're going to see him. This curb sneaks up on you. Don't really see it because it's blind going through there, and you can just see the car barrel rolling on the outside. I feel bad for laughing because Anders Meyer, he has to be kicking himself now down to 36 positions as he had to tow back as his car was stuck on its lid. But I'm sure he had to have been thinking, what in the world just happened? One minute you're running very good position. He was running in the top 5, I believe, and the next thing you know, he is on his roof just flipping multiple times. That was a very strange incident, but with those kind of curbs, I was expecting incidents relating to those kind of curbs, so I was more expecting some with the outside sausage curbs, definitely not the inside, but the way that curb was placed, it really catches you off guard. We're seeing Roseth trying to catch David off guard there as he goes to the inside, going through the chicane. He has managed to make it up to 13th. He was running towards the tail end of the field after he had that mistake earlier on in the race where he hit the inside wall going through that corner there, and he has managed to put on a pretty good recovery drive.
Yeah, how much further could he get up? Well, I think the next two drivers are very possible, Wells and Taroshki. And there goes Wells' teammates. So on Kroll, we did see him gain a place a few laps ago, but that's on the entry still. He hasn't even reached turn 1 before he spun there, but he somehow hasn't hit the wall. I am curious as to what on earth happened here. He's lost it well beforehand, unless has he just like brake too hard and then spun it by himself. There he is, and then yeah, on the grass he managed to lose it, and Beast Racing driver losing a place. I think that's Adam Starzinski in all of that. Here's Paul Joseph Cliss having a decent run actually. Here's Paul Joseph Cliss, 8th place in class. I think that he's going to lose that place now to Starzinski, who has had some setbacks himself. And Adam up to 33rd. Montini has got past Scuret, and Scuret has dropped down the order. Our race leader in the Pro-Ams at the halfway stage, where it's gone very negatively for him in this second stint, and he's now down to 15th position. Remember, he was battling with Asfarg earlier on. He was ahead of Asfarg. He's now 13 seconds behind. There was the initial contact. I think that was with Gordon Hawk actually. And apologies, it was Jay Walsh. He was a lap down. And maybe a bit over-ambitious there, because if you get the blue flags, you do have to let them go. But maybe that wasn't quite the time to go for the maneuver.
Yeah, trying to let a driver pass in turn 3s. We're seeing another incident here. This Jay Walsh parked it on the barriers. I mentioned that earlier on in the race, and now he's just, I don't know if he parked it there to try and do an oil change on his car mid-race or what, so we're going to get a replay here. I'm sure he just overshot it going into here, which is a very easy thing to do, and he goes for the runoff area. It's very tight to get through here, and oh, I think he thought that those barriers were gonna. I thought those. He probably thought those barriers were modeled like the cones here in iRacing, and that they were just gonna get knocked over when he went past. But clearly, definitely a surprise for him. He was probably thinking, "What in the world just happened?" We've had a lot of what in the world incidents. We had Myers flipping about 5 times coming through the final corner. We just saw Jay Walsh flat out go into the barrier all on his own fruition, obviously not thinking that those barriers were going to stop him in the manner that they did.
Kieran Smart into the pits. I do not know what this one is about. I don't think it's repairs. I think he's underfueled it. 7 minutes to go. That is a pain. Apologies, I think Smart had to come in really early, didn't he? He had to pit on about the 15-minute mark. So yeah, was never going to get to the end of the race. So it was always in a bit of a an unrepresentative position on. So there's the conditions. 3:15. It's not especially warm, but Japanese tarmac obviously. So always going to be a little bit slippery. It's also one of the newer tracks to iRacing as well. But it's not as bad as I think a lot of people anticipated this circuit when it comes to grip. When it was first introduced, and just 18 degrees. We've got the Porsche Cups tomorrow. And we set the temperatures beforehand in order to match the PES qualifier. So in fact, entry still open for the Porsche Cups, by the way. Only round 2 tomorrow, so you can still sign up on apexracingleague.com. Tommaso Montini. Oh, well, he was scything his way through, was Montini. He was down as low as 15th at one point. I think he got himself back up in to the top 9. I think it was ahead of Wells, wasn't he? In second place in the Pro-Ams. And it's the slippery curves. I mentioned that earlier on as well. And an awkward spin doesn't have to quite reverse, fortunately. But that has undone so many of his good moves, and he's lost best part of 10 places due to that spin.
I think he picked up some very light damage as he just nudged it twice going into the, trying to get it around. I think he nudged it twice in the Armco barrier down on the inside of that corner. So tough break for him. I was fully expecting him to be a little bit wide and just hit that curb and kind of unsettle him. Then he goes into the grass and just spins around. But I'd be wrong. The slippery nature of these curbs, I felt that when I was driving this combination earlier. Going through here, turn 3, I dropped it on my very first out lap there. Just hit the outside curb and just spun around like a top. So we saw that very tough break there from Montini. He was running in the lead of the Pro-Am category, then dropped back a little bit, and then managed to make it up into the podium spot. But then slowly lost positions, and now he's running down in 18th overall and pretty much hopelessly out of contention for the win in the Pro-Am category. So very tough race for him. I'm sure he has to be kicking himself for that small little mistake that's going to cost him big time in these final 10 minutes of this race.
Yeah, and we've got we've got a couple of battles going on at the moment. In fact, all the battles pretty much are going on between 9th and 21st. So we're sort of in the Pro-Am region. A few pros to be fair in as well. There goes Rosser. Get about the straight. He just wants to get past straight away, and that's a fantastic line as well for Seth. Maybe, of course, different drivers taking different lines through that final corner. Some with a tighter line, some with a wide line, ever so tricky. Let's see how triples Sorensen around. Well, we're seeing a lot of mistakes from some very good drivers as this race progresses. And he was running in 4th position, was Sorensen, after the issues for Anders Meyer earlier on. But he's now dropped down to 7th place. Kolnaji gets back one of those places that he lost. Fujita as well. Carl Winkler is not seemingly doing too much in this race. He's actually up to 4th position now, but is being caught by Fujita. That might be one to watch later on. But this one is the one to watch at the moment, because Jack Wells, as Jack Wells so often does, under the radar, he's up to 9th position, 2nd place in the Pro-Ams. He's got Rosseth, and Rosseth's gone for it straight away. He was a bit early on the brakes, and no hesitation from the Norwegian. The Brits cannot hold him back, and Rosseth is absolutely going for unorthodox moves at every opportunity. He's not waiting for the straights, he's just going for it wherever he's got pace. Was going to try to retaliate, but there's not going to be any overtaking opportunity there. He's going to have to wait till later in the lap. Turoshki, who's been on the tail of Wells for a while, right with these drivers, and Stephen David for Scuderia Volpe Giala at the back of this train at the moment, which really hasn't been closer than this for this whole race, but it's never really been a whole lot more. But look at the Porsche sprint away. Rosser with fantastic pace in these closing stages.
Some fantastic battling there. Roseth is putting on a fantastic recovery drive. I mentioned it like 5 times. I'll mention it again. He had that mistake early on in the race, and just now he's managed to make it all the way up to second in the other Pro-Am category. Considering how far Asphalt is ahead of these 2 drivers, I don't think he'll manage to battle him for the win. We're seeing him weaving all across the straightaway, trying to break the slipstream there. But still, very good stuff there from Roseth, even though he will probably finish in the position that he's at unless he makes some kind of mistake and then gets eaten up by Wills and Tarotsky. It's still a fantastic drive there from Roseth. He's put on a fantastic race tonight.
Yeah, it will be really good points for a man who really do need to consider for the championship. So many new drivers to Apex Racing League in the Browns. We weren't quite sure what the pecking order would be, similar to the pros, admittedly. Yeah, he has really established himself very well, along with his compatriot Asfarg. We've got Backmarker doing a very good job getting him out of the way, but was just trying to hold on to as many places as he can now. Made good progress up through the order as our race leader starts his final lap of the race. We're going to miss out on an extra lap by about 10 seconds. But Chorski has got past Wells, but Wells has been able to come back. Super close to contact between the 2 of them, and this is going to get involved Bjorklund and so many other drivers. Look at them, they're chasing them down. It's going to be incredibly close from 10th down to 18th. That's some 5 seconds separating them after nearly an hour on the clock. And look at the move now for the Lamborghini, but round goes David, who was in a fantastic position to get the toe onto the pit street, but he wanted to get one of those places beforehand, and just a small spin like that immediately plummets him down 6 places.
I think that was definitely an overzealous move. You don't see too many overtakes going into there, and a track like this where that final few section of corners is pretty, I would have to say it's just single file, more of a procession really. I compared it to Monaco earlier in the other broadcast. I think that's honestly the case, where you can't really go side by side through there without either barging a driver off the track or just forcing it and sending it in there. So very tough break from David. He is going to drop through the running order just before the start of the final lap. Utter heartbreak for him there.
Wells was able to sort of get away from Turovsky, I think, with that contact with David. Wells just got a bit of a break, and whilst it's a long run to the checker flag around this circuit, I don't think there'll be an opportunity for anyone to respond. But our race leader is approaching the final corner, approaching the checker flag. In fact, it's been another dominant performance, and it's 2 wins in a row now for the McLaren driver. It's 2 wins in a row for Antonino San Marco, who takes a commanding lead in the Apex Racing League GT3 Trophy Championship. Thomas Bangen will finish in 2nd place. Emmanuel Oliveri will get on the podium for G Esports. Winkler looks like he's going to hold on against Fujita, who will be close up the line. It's down to 0.3 of a second, but the draft effect is not strong enough. And Course Sim Racing, a very nice result there. Winkler, one of the few drivers who did not make a mistake, and he's up 5 places from his race start. Still a good recovery from Fujita, but he will feel like a podium was very much up for grabs if it weren't for a late spin. There's been a few changes behind. Taj Edwards has had a setback. He's dropped down the order. There's also a run to the line between Bjorklund and Skuret. Skuret trying to get back up there. I think Skuret has passed Bjorklund on this last lap of the race. He's trying to come back right now, is the Norwegian driver, but it's not going to happen for him. And a car stops in the middle of the circuit. Absolutely humongous crash right there, similar to an incident that they had in GTs, actually in Super GT around this circuit a couple of years ago. Yannick Willems, top of the amateur drivers. Really strong performance from the Belgian. Didn't go his way in round 1, but that was comfortable for him. Way clear of Chris Kirk, who didn't really have any issues, did the Street Trends sim racing driver. Just a long way back. Bianco not able to quite pass him on the run to the line. Well, a fantastic race once again there, Ron. And, well, once again, Samarco, we didn't really see much of him out there because he was in a league of his own. I mean, I thought maybe Spa may have been a one-off. Perhaps he just, like, you know, nailed the McLaren out there as preparation for Spa 24. But around here, he was, dare I say, more dominant than back at Spa. And that's ominous for the rest of the order.
Oh yeah, he is definitely going to be a force to be reckoned with throughout this season. We were thinking that the McLaren's pace might be a bit bit spotty here and there. We'll still have to wait and see how the performance changes as this season develops and as we go to some different racetracks. But a track like Fuji, which is just a tad bit different compared to Spa, it's certainly not apples and oranges, but it's definitely not the same racetrack. We were expecting Samarco to be a bit probably closer to the rest of the field, but we saw Samarco just put on an even more dominant performance than he did last week in Spa. He takes the win tonight.
Yeah, 13 seconds clear of Vangen, but by the way he was pulling away in the early stages, I feel like he could have been more like 20, honestly, if he really kept on pushing. But Vangen in a comfortable second place, so it was pretty much a perfect performance from him as well. Emmanuel Oliveri, very satisfying third place there. He actually lost out in the pit stop sequence. He was down as low as 6th place with 20 minutes to go in the race, but kind of drivers had incidents in front of him, and he managed to take the podium. It was Carl Winkler, Kazuki Fujita up 8 places to 5th, then it's Kolnagi. Sorensen, despite a late spin, finished in 7th. Then is Asfaug, who took the Pro-Ams comfortably, but that does not tell the whole story. He was ahead of Rosset. Then it was Jack Wells rounding out the top 10, beating out Turuski, Skuret and Bjorklund. Larson was in 14th. Then it was Gunzelman, Montini, who really should have been up in the top 10, honestly, tonight, but had an awful kind of end to both stints, really. Then it was Edwards in 17th, David 18th, Engel 19th, and Kloschel 20th. Behind that was Yannick Willems, who was top of the amateurs. Then Kleissens, Bass, Verm, Crook, Bianco, Leo, Smart, De Vlamnik, De Boiver, Starzinski, Kroll, Sklist, Yanni, Cabral, De Boiver, Wines, Multicleve, Hugh, Horg, Vey, Horg and Vey. Very poor rounds for them, who are a couple of leaders in the AMs going into this round. Samsung, Walsh, Meyer, Durgris, and Jestren Bakken. Those bottom 3 not scoring points. Meyer didn't quite complete enough laps, I believe, to score points, so he will be disappointed with that, because even for 44th, you still get about 15 points, which can be useful at the end of the season, albeit, as he keeps it clean for the rest of the championship, this will be his drop score, so it won't be too damning on his final result. Let's have an interview with a few of our drivers. I've been chatting away for a while, Bjorn, so would you like to have first picks on who you want to chat with?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, we've had some fantastic performances throughout tonight, and I believe one of the most impressive was from your second place second place runner. I can't speak right now. Thomas Wangen. I can't really speak right now. Who finishes second tonight. He put on a pretty decent drive there. Thomas, we saw you not too much throughout this race, put on a very quiet drive, finishing second tonight, and very clear of Oliveri, who finished third. How's the race from your end?
A little bit uninspected from my side. I have done a lot of practice, but second place overall, yeah, quite happy. After 4 laps, all my telemetry went dark, so I have no dashboard, nothing, so we overfueled a little bit in pit lane just to be sure. So, yep, I need to talk with Sam afterwards.
Yeah, definitely having a telemetry blackout would not be too good. I know my first ever broadcast, I had a complete camera blackout, so I couldn't see anything that was happening on track, so I can relate to that feeling of, I guess the right term would be helplessness, when you don't really know what's going on. All you see is just cars on track and don't really know what else is going on. So, I mean, we saw throughout this race how really just keeping it on the road was really important. So, a track like this where you can definitely make some mistakes. We're seeing on the other replay here, you slow motion going through turn 3. That was definitely a very tricky corner to get right. I know in my brief time driving the Audi earlier today around that corner, it was very tricky, especially on the other exit curb. So what was your most challenging corner of all the other corners on the circuit tonight?
From the Dunlop chicane in the bottom and up to the start-finish line. We tried to push a little bit to check if we can hang on Antonio, but he showed pretty fast. He's a little bit too alien for me, so yeah, we settled down for a second, tried to make that happen, and Anders did a good pit stop, but and saw in my mirror, right, he rolled the car in the last corner, unfortunately. So yeah, the last part of the track is pretty hard, I think.
Yeah, well, that incident from Meyer there when he flipped it multiple times coming around the final corner was from the sausage curbs, which I did mention in the other pre-race jibber jabber that we had on tonight's broadcast. Was it hard to avoid some of those curbs because they were placed in pretty inopportune positions? You saw the other two big curbs exiting the other final corner. So was it a bit hard to try and avoid those curbs, especially towards the other end of the stint where the other tires were starting to fall off a little bit?
It's hard to know where they are, because if you are behind someone, the sausage curves is a blind spot, and you don't see them on exit of the corner. So basically, you need to practice a lot to try to avoid them. But we hit them a few times and get a wheel damage, but nothing big deal. So I think it's just a phantom message or something. I don't notice anything.
Definitely a very good point about not seeing the curbs, and that unfortunately caught out Meyer as he hit the other inside curb there, the inside sausage curb of the final corner. You put on a very good drive tonight. Anyone you want to shout out or give thanks to?
Of course, you guys make this happen. Always fun to take a part of Apex League. And my team, IGL Coatings, Sande Trafikkskole, Elverdi, and EK Sim for doing a 3D printing on my rig.
Certainly very true. Thank you for your support, and if it wasn't for you guys putting on a fantastic race on track, these broadcasts wouldn't be possible. So Thomas, thank you very much for joining us, and we hope to see some good performances like that throughout the rest of the season, and I'm sure you do too. Thomas, thank you.
Thank you.
So Thomas Vangen there, our second place finisher tonight. I would like to have a chat next up with our amateur winner, Yannick Willems, who joins us now. Congratulations, Yannick. What a fantastic result for yourself. The winner in the amateur category. You must be delighted.
I'm beyond words. This is my first Apex League, and I just committed to the Porsche, and we started, and I knew that Gordon had the pace. I mean, he was the fastest guy in quali, but then we had that incident in the run-up to the last section, and I saw he was out, and it was like David as well, because they were P1 and P2 in the championship. So I'm really satisfied with the way the race went. Amazing race.
Really was. Take us through that first lap, actually, because you must have only been a couple of cars behind sort of the start of the mayhem at the chicane. How were you able to get through it?
Well, it's one of the things, and I have to say that the preparation for Spa, the 24 hours, really changed my mindset into that a bit, because I saw, I have to check who it was, but one of the AM drivers was really trying to bomb in the first corner, so he was really trying to push himself through. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to stay patient. I think it was Simone. He was really trying to take up the space on the track. And I was like, okay, I'm going to let him pass and we'll see, because I know that once you get too impatient on Fuji, especially with the Porsche and with cold tires, it starts to have a mind on its own. So it was really trying to stay focused, stay in my spot, and really try to remain patient to give myself some slack on seeing where I get to end up. But I was really lucky, and I was also trying to avoid the AM Pro guys a bit, because I knew that Christopher was running back, and at the moment he lost four places, and then I knew just take it easy and try to finish it. So really satisfied.
Yeah, absolutely, you should be. And it seemed like you had some decent battles out there as well. I mean, of course, yourself and Kolashaw only a 10th between each other at the ends of the race. Was it just Paul that you had a good fight with, or were there a couple of others as well which you battled with? Because it seemed like sort of around your area there was a lot of drivers yo-yoing, kind of overtaking and then maybe falling back a bit.
Well, actually, because Dominic and Paul were really trying to... I had the feeling they were battling, because I saw them in my mirrors, but I was getting a bit worried about the tire wear, so I decided, okay, I'm not going to take any risks, and I let Paul pass with it, but then I saw I was good at getting back again. I had some great battles with PJ, one of my other country mates, and I had the feeling he was fuel saving, so I was like, okay, what the hell is he doing? But aside from that, I just told Mattia, who was in the chat here as well, that I'm really amazed with the patience that every driver here has on track, and the fact that everybody seems very conscious about the fact that you have to give each other positions. So aside from Paul, I think PG, Simone a bit in the first laps, Christopher from a distance, so that was really looking out for what I was going to do. But I would say a very stable and relaxing race, I would say.
Well, that's very good to hear. It's good to hear that drivers, after 4 years of Apex Racing League, have finally got some patience. So, clearly what we're doing is something good. Is there anyone
Absolutely.
you'd like to give a shout out to, Yannick?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my teammates at Digitrax for really having the patience of preparing for that 24 hours, because Spa was an amazing opener. And really my team and my wife for being so patient, for allowing me so much time to spend on this fantastic hobby.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having a chat with us, Yannick, and I hope that you can keep up this form for the rest of the season. I'm sure you will.
Thanks, guys. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Yannick Willems there, finishing up in 21st place overall and first place in the amateur drivers, and I think after tonight may well be the amateur championship leader. So quite a turn of fortunes for himself. Ron, would you like to take our last interview with Matteo Colnaghi there?
Yeah, sure thing. This was a gentleman that had a very dramatic race from start to finish. Matteo Colnaghi, you had a very dramatic race, my friend. You had a couple incidents here and there, but still put together a very good drive pace-wise for sure. Was definitely a force to be reckoned with at times. How's the race?
I think a difficult one. Was really quick at the start, and after the pit stop, I was dropping off the pace a little bit. So I had to defend a bit, and obviously it didn't go so well.
Yeah, it was definitely some tough incidents. Very unfortunate incident that we had for you towards the end of the race there. I believe it was coming through the second to last corner there, where you hit the curb there and got a little bit too happy there, and unfortunately spun into the grass. I did mention this at the start of the broadcast, how the curbs at this track, the red and white painted curbs, could play a bit of havoc at certain parts of this track. It felt like they were pretty much covered in oil. So did you feel that at all? Did you feel like the other curbs on this track were covered in oil, or was it just regular curb looseness there?
I think the main thing to watch out for on this track is the sausage curbs, the yellow sausage curbs, as on the exit it's really easy to go a little bit wide and hit them, and obviously then your wheels are unaligned if you hit them hard enough. So I think that's one area that most drivers probably had difficulties with in this race.
Well, I'll tell you, we did see some very dramatic incidents involving those curbs. It was Anders Meyer who actually hit one of those curbs on the inside there, and managed to flip like 4 or 5 times before hitting the outside barrier. So you mentioned the curbs on the outside, but the one killer curb on the inside kind of snuck up on you there on the snuck up on some drivers there on the final corner there. That's a very tricky corner to sight at, the final corner, and it's definitely very important to get that corner right, to have a great run coming onto the final corner. So could you take the viewers through the importance of trying to get a good run at that last corner?
Well, obviously the straight is very long here at Fuji, and so getting a really good run out of the last corner is important, either for overtaking or for defending your position, as the slipstream effect is much more strong than most other tracks. Obviously the last corner is very tricky, as you can either go a tighter line and gain on the inside, or a wider line and gain on the exit. But I think this race proved to be better by going tighter, as you gain more on the entry than the exit.
Certainly a very important corner, and we appreciate your insight into how the other drivers treated this track tonight. Thank you for joining us. Certainly a very dramatic race from your end. Anyone you'd like to give thanks to or shout out?
Big thanks to the team for all the work done prior to this race.
There you go, Matteo Colnaghi. Thank you very much for joining us. Very dramatic race. Hope to see you throughout the rest of the season, my friend.
Thank you.
So that was our final interview there, Matteo. And yeah, of course, as everyone says, hopefully we'll see much more of him as the season goes on. For our next round of the championship, going to be Road America in 1 week's time. Another low downforce circuit. Personally, one of my absolute favourites from. I think everyone will be very much looking forward to that. I'd say the biggest difference compared to this track, narrow. It is a very narrow circuit. It's very high speed, but you don't have even half the track's width around that circuit. So the trials are going to have to be a little bit more spatially aware, I imagine, to get through that safely.
I could imagine so at a track like that, which is fairly narrow. I'll put my American bias aside, but I still think that Road America is an absolutely fantastic circuit. We always see some great racing there, and with the other slipstream that we've seen come into an effect in some of these races, it might play dividends, especially going into turn 1 and Canada corner, so that'll be a fantastic race to watch in 1 week's time.
Yeah, we really look forward to that. Of course, we've got plenty of other action coming up on the channel as well in the next couple of days. We've, of course, got the Apex Racing Academy Porsche Cup coming up. We've also got the Apex Racing Academy Formula 3 Super Series coming up on Friday, and then we've also got Radical Racing Challenge Formula 3.5, Weekend Woes in the Formula 4s. We've got the Spec Racer Fords in as well, and also iRacing Israel League on Monday. Loads of stuff. Basically, like this video, subscribe to Apex Racing TV, and check out the Apex Racing TV YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages as well, in order to get extra content as well from our events. Of course, big thanks to SDK Gaming, to Virtual Racing School, and to Apex Racing Academy as well for supporting this series and this broadcast as well. But for now, from myself, Sam Fitzpatrick, from Ron Mons, and from Samuli Kumo, we are going to say goodbye, and we'll see you back in 1 week's time at Road America. See you then.